Know that there's a lot of new information that's coming in with regards to these press conferences. At 6:42, let's bring in Dr. Richard Weinblatt. He is a former police chief and manager of the Police Academy at Seminole Community College. Thanks for joining us. We want to get right to it with all these press conferences, specifically with the meter reader, and to get your reaction. And how do they actually consider somebody a suspect in this?
Well, it's kind of interesting, and I've actually gotten quite a few questions about this right away. Gosh, isn't this person a suspect? And as Captain Angelo Nieves of the Orange County Sheriff's Office said emphatically that this time this person is not a suspect. And Christine, as you know, you've been doing this a while, truth is stranger than fiction, and sometimes there are weird coincidences. As far as when they consider the suspect, they have to start developing credible information that would point an arrow towards that individual, towards that man or that woman, as the case may be. And as at this point, at least according to what they're saying, they don't have that. But they need to have some definitive information to point to somebody before they just willy-nilly say that. You know, they have to be very careful about what they do and what they say. Also, you know, they're gathering these bones, the remains. What are they doing with these bones for people who may not understand? Well, the first thing that they're doing is they're doing their grid pattern search. They have to search in a very orderly, methodical method. The first thing that any defense team is going to say, rightfully so from their perspective, is that shoddy work was done. So they want to make sure that that is not said. So they have to go very methodically in a grid pattern through that area, cataloging what they find, where they find it. And some of it is quite small. That's why they're using various sifting type of equipment so that they can go through that. So that's very, very important. Once they get it and catalog it, then it has to be sent out, in this case, to the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia, so that it can be tested, it can be checked out. The medical examiner's office, Dr. G, as famously known from her show, needs to also look at it and everything. And of course, some things may be obvious, something called, tool marks, such as stabbing type wounds, blunt trauma, things like that. Other things may not be so obvious, such as the chloroform that we've talked about before here on Central Florida News 13, and that you may have to go to a bone marrow type of situation as opposed to tissue, because a lot of tissue is not present because of decomposition and because of animals, as Kelly pointed out, in the area.
Obviously, there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes, those who are at the crime scene. What are some things that people at home that may not realize that can kind of help us better understand what's going on?
Well, this is real police work. This is very nitty-gritty. It's time-consuming. It's dirty. It's not the glamorous stuff that people see on television. It's not CSI that you see on television. These are the real crime scene investigators that are sitting there with the snakes, as Kelly pointed out, and with the other things such as poison ivy. They had a poison ivy issue out there too. And people don't realize this is hard work, and this is detail work, because they want to make sure that Jose Baez and his defense team cannot adequately say that they were shoddy or remiss in what they were doing.
You used to be a former police chief. I'm just curious, because we're dealing with remains, we're dealing with, a missing toddler.
Right.
Many of these guys have families of themselves. How do they deal with this emotionally? It's got to be hard.
Well, what they have to do, like most law enforcement professionals out there, whether you're a deputy, a police officer, an investigator, or a police chief, you need to separate your emotions because you have a job to do. You want to make sure that you get the right person who's responsible, whether it turns out to be Casey or it turns out to be somebody else. Even though we all tend to be of the thinking that it may be Casey, they want to make sure that they do it in a fair and equitable way so that they know exactly who it points to. They have to put their emotions aside to do that. That's not to say, Christine, that when they go home, especially when they hug their children, I have a 7-year-old son, when you hug your child and everything, it kind of comes back to you. But when you put that uniform on, you put that badge on, whatever, it's time to get down to business and it's time to do police work.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Richard Weinblatt, former police chief and manager of Police Academy at Seminole Community College. We also want to let you know another new development that came down today, that if the remains are identified as Caylee Anthony, the first to be notified will be her mother, Caylee Anthony. Make sure you stay with News 13 for the latest on this, and of course on our website, cfnews13.com.